A former casino CEO just revealed something that could change everything you think you know about how casinos operate. For decades, we've heard about the machines that cost players the most money, but what about the machines that cost casinos millions? The ones they desperately tried to remove from their floors but couldn't? What these insiders are saying will shock you. Machine number one, Megabucks Progressive. This is the machine that paid out so big, casinos wanted it gone forever. In 2003, at the Excalibur in Las Vegas, a 25-year-old software engineer walked up to a Megabucks machine, put in a $100 bill, and 3 hours later walked away with $39.7 million. That's not a typo. According to former casino operations directors, this single payout created an internal crisis at properties across Nevada. Here's why. Megabucks operates as a wide area progressive system, meaning multiple casinos are connected to the same jackpot pool. Every time someone plays at any participating property, a percentage of their bet feeds into one massive jackpot. Sounds reasonable until you understand the contract structure. Former executives reveal that casinos were locked into mandatory participation agreements. They couldn't just remove the machines after a catastrophic payout like the 2003 incident. Internal reports indicate that properties were contractually obligated to keep these machines on their floors for years, sometimes decades, regardless of performance. The cruel irony? Casinos kept them anyway because these machines brought in hopeful players by the thousands. People saw that $39.7 million winner on the news and flooded casino floors, convinced they'd be next. But here's what makes it even worse. The house still had to pay fees to the manufacturer, maintain the machines, and dedicate premium floor space to units that had just hemorrhaged millions in a single night. One former casino VP stated they ran the numbers after major megabucks hits, and the math showed it could take years, sometimes over a decade, for the system to recover what was lost in one jackpot. But if you think that's bad for casinos, wait until you hear about machine number two, Wheel of Fortune Triple Extreme Spin. This machine was so problematic it generated legal nightmares that cost casinos millions more in a completely different way. Machine number two, Wheel of Fortune Triple Extreme Spin. This is the machine so problematic it became a legal nightmare that haunted casino legal departments for years. Throughout the 2010s, documented cases started piling up of this machine, displaying jackpot amounts on the bonus wheel, spinning, landing on those amounts, and then flashing error codes instead of paying out. According to former slot floor managers, the technical issue stemmed from bonus wheel calibration problems that caused frequent malfunctions during the most critical moment, right when players thought they'd won big. Internal reports from multiple properties reveal that these malfunctions didn't just happen occasionally. Former technicians state that certain units experienced calibration failures up to 3 or 4 times per week. Here's where it became catastrophic for casinos. Every single malfunction triggered a formal dispute that required floor supervisor intervention, surveillance review, and incident documentation. But the real costs came from what happened next. Gaming Commission investigations were launched at properties across multiple states. Former casino legal counsel reveals that each disputed payout required extensive documentation, video evidence review, machine diagnostics reports, and communication with both gaming regulators and the manufacturer IGT. The legal costs alone, according to estimates from former casino executives, reached between $2 and $3 million per property over the span of several years. That's before counting settlement payments to players, which several insiders confirm happened regularly to avoid prolonged litigation. But here's what makes it even worse. The player trust damage was irreparable at some properties. Former pit managers report that they watched regulars, people who'd been coming to their casino for years, simply stop playing Wheel of Fortune machines altogether after witnessing or experiencing these malfunctions firsthand. One former floor supervisor stated they spent more time per shift resolving Wheel of Fortune disputes than managing their entire section of table games. IGT eventually issued retrofit requirements, basically forcing casinos to pay for updated components to fix manufacturing defects that should never have made it to casino floors in the first place. The financial analysis told a brutal story. These machines were generating revenue, but when you subtracted legal fees, settlement costs, retrofit expenses, lost player confidence, and the countless staff hours consumed by malfunction protocols, former CFOs revealed the units were operating at a net loss at many properties. And speaking of machines that cause more problems than profit, machine number 3 is where things get really interesting. Because this classic machine had a fatal flaw that cost casinos millions in a completely different way. Before we get to that, and trust me, this one involved professional player teams systematically exploiting a vulnerability that casinos didn't even know existed until it was too late. I need to ask you something. If you're finding this information valuable, if you're shocked by what former casino executives are revealing, I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe and hit that notification bell. The information I'm sharing comes from dozens of hours of interviews with former casino executives, floor managers, and gaming regulators who finally agreed to go on record about what really happened behind closed doors. What you're about to hear next represents some of the most closely guarded secrets in the casino industry, and the next machines on this list are even more shocking than what we've covered so far. Machine number 3, Blazing Sevens, the original Bally version. This classic machine had a fatal flaw that cost casinos millions. And here's the part that makes casino executives uncomfortable even talking about it years later. During the late 1990s and early 2000s, this machine became an advantage player's paradise. According to former surveillance directors, the problem wasn't that the machine paid out too much randomly. The problem was that it paid out predictably. Internal documentation reveals that the progressive meters on certain Blazing Sevens units actually showed when the jackpot was statistically due to hit. Former slot technicians report that the light sequence patterns before big hits followed recognizable cycles, and early generation random number generators weren't as random as casinos believed. Professional player teams figured this out fast. One former surveillance director stated they watched the same groups of players systematically target these machines week after week, winning between $40,000 and $60,000 per week at a single property. Here's what made this catastrophic. Casinos couldn't just remove the machines immediately. Player popularity and existing floor contracts meant these units had to stay active even while they were hemorrhaging money to players who knew exactly what they were looking at. The countermeasures came eventually: urgent firmware updates, strategic machine repositioning to high surveillance areas, and eventual phase out, but the damage was done. According to estimates from former casino operations managers, properties lost millions before they fully understood what was happening. And remember, this wasn't just bad luck or variance. This was a technical vulnerability being exploited by players who understood the machines better than the people operating them. Now you might think casinos learned their lesson about technical reliability after that disaster, but machine number 4 proves they didn't. Machine number 4, Hot Roll Dice. This is the machine that broke down more than it paid out. And former slot technicians will tell you it was the single most frustrating unit they ever had to maintain. The problem was the physical dice mechanism. According to internal maintenance logs, these machines experienced constant jamming issues that required technician callouts multiple times per shift. One former lead technician stated they'd fix the same hot roll machine 3 or 4 times during an 8-hour shift. The calibration requirements alone made these units a nightmare. Every time the dice mechanism jammed, it required recalibration before the machine could go back into service. Parts replacement became so frequent that some properties kept dedicated hot roll spare parts inventory just to avoid ordering delays. But here's where the financial picture gets really ugly. Former casino operations analysts broke down the numbers, and what they found was damning. Maintenance costs were exceeding revenue generated by significant margins at multiple properties. When you factor in technician overtime, parts replacement costs, and the lost revenue from constant downtime, these machines were consuming premium floor space while operating at a net loss. According to one former slot director, the downtime impact alone meant they were losing thousands of dollars per week in opportunity cost because a hot roll machine occupying valuable floor space was spending more time broken than operational. Player frustration added another dimension of damage. Former floor managers report that regulars would actively avoid these machines because they'd experienced or witnessed breakdowns so frequently. That's reputation damage that extends beyond just one machine. Manufacturing recall considerations were discussed at the executive level, but the complexity of lease contracts and the accounting implications of write-offs meant many properties were stuck with these units for years, but maintenance costs weren't the only reason casinos regretted machines. What comes next involves a completely different kind of nightmare, one that played out over 2 decades and became a legendary embarrassment that casino executives still cringe about today. Machine number 5. Lion's Share. This is the machine that became a 20-year embarrassment and a social media phenomenon that highlighted exactly how rare progressive jackpots actually hit. At the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, this machine sat on the casino floor from 1993 until 2014 without paying its top jackpot. According to former casino operations managers, this created an unprecedented public relations nightmare. The machine became famous for all the wrong reasons. Players would specifically seek it out, not because they thought they'd win, but because it had become a tourist attraction representing the impossibility of hitting progressives. Former marketing directors reveal that social media posts about the machine generated millions of impressions, essentially providing free advertising for how rarely jackpots actually pay. The financial impact extended beyond just the machine itself. It occupied premium floor space for 2 decades while generating minimal revenue compared to modern units. Former slot directors state that the opportunity cost alone, what they could have earned with a different machine in that location, reached into the millions over 20 years. When the jackpot finally hit in 2014 for $2.4 million. Former executives admit it was almost a relief because they could finally remove this walking advertisement for progressive jackpot rarity. But the reputation damage lasted far longer than the machine's tenure on the floor. Machine number 6, pinball. This skill-based disaster cost the industry millions in failed pilot programs and proved that players don't actually want what they say they want. In the mid-2000s, casinos became convinced that millennials needed skill-based gaming to get them interested in slots. According to former casino innovation directors, industry-wide research suggested younger players wanted games where their abilities mattered, not just pure chance. Enter pinball and similar skill-based hybrids. The development costs were astronomical. Former product development executives reveal that creating these machines required entirely new mathematical models, regulatory approvals in multiple jurisdictions, extensive field testing, and player education programs. Industry estimates suggest the collective investment reached between $3 and $4 million across pilot programs at major properties. The reality was brutal and immediate. Former slot directors report that actual play data showed these machines performing worse than traditional slots in every meaningful metric. Time on device, revenue per unit, player return rate, everything. Players would try them once out of curiosity, realize the skill component didn't meaningfully improve their odds or experience, and return to traditional games. But here's what made it truly catastrophic. Casinos had already committed to extensive floor space reconfigurations, marketing campaigns promoting the new era of gaming, and staff training on how to explain these complex game mechanics. One former casino executive stated they knew within the first month that the concept had failed, but contractual obligations meant keeping the machines active for at least a year while they hemorrhaged money. The failed experiment didn't just cost direct financial losses. It fundamentally damaged casino credibility around innovation and delayed legitimate technological improvements for years because executives became gun-shy about anything. Labeled revolutionary. Machine number 7. Elvis Lives. This machine cost casinos millions before it even hit the floor. And what former casino CFOs reveal about the licensing deal structure will make you understand why executives still call this the most expensive mistake in slot machine history. According to internal financial documents, the Elvis Presley Estate licensing agreement wasn't just expensive up front. It was structured in a way that guaranteed casinos would lose money regardless of how the machines performed. Former casino finance directors break down the nightmare. Massive upfront licensing fees running into the millions, ongoing royalty percentages on every single spin at every single machine. And here's the killer. Minimum guarantee payments that casinos owed the Elvis estate whether players touched these machines or not. Multiple machines in the themed series meant these costs multiplied across casino floors. The financial bleeding started immediately. Initial player excitement brought crowds for the first few weeks, but former slot directors report that retention was abysmal. Players would try it once, maybe twice, then go back to their regular machines. The revenue numbers weren't even close to justifying the licensing costs. One former casino CFO stated the math never worked, that properties were literally paying the Elvis estate more money than the machines were generating in hold. Real numbers tell the story. Industry estimates suggest casinos paid between $15 and $20 million collectively in licensing costs, while actual revenue generated fell short by millions. But here's what made it truly catastrophic. Casinos were locked into multi-year contracts with no early termination clauses that didn't involve massive penalties. Former operations executives reveal they tried everything. Strategic repositioning to higher traffic areas, denomination changes to encourage more play, expensive promotional campaigns offering bonus credits just to drive player engagement. Nothing worked. The machines were fundamentally underperforming, and the licensing structure meant every day they sat on the floor, casinos were losing money. Contract buyout negotiations happened at multiple properties, according to former legal counsel. But the costs were so prohibitive that most casinos just had to wait out the contract terms, while hemorrhaging money month after month. This disaster fundamentally changed how casinos approach licensed content deals. Former industry consultants confirmed that Elvis Lives became the cautionary tale used in every licensing negotiation afterward. But expensive licensing deals weren't the only contracts casinos regretted. Machine number 8 represents a different kind of timing catastrophe, one where casinos paid premium prices for a brand that collapsed spectacularly right as the machines hit casino floors. This one involved one of the biggest entertainment franchises in modern history, and what happened next was a billion-dollar industry watching in real time as their investment turned toxic. Machine number 8, Game of Thrones. This machine was obsolete before it was even installed, and the timing disaster that unfolded represents one of the most expensive miscalculations in modern casino history. Former casino marketing directors explain what happened. When Aristocrat secured the Game of Thrones license, it was during the height of the show's cultural dominance. Massive brand recognition, enormous marketing potential, player anticipation through the roof. Casinos committed to premium pricing and minimum floor quantities because every projection suggested these machines would print money. Then reality hit. Standard development and regulatory approval processes take 2 to 3 years in the slot machine industry. By the time Game of Thrones machines actually arrived on casino floors in mid-2019, the show's final season had already aired in April and May of that year, to what former executives describe as catastrophic fan backlash. The cultural phenomenon had become cultural, poisoned practically overnight. Former slot directors report something they'd never seen before. Players actively avoiding a major branded machine because of negative associations with how the source material ended. The financial impact was immediate and brutal. Revenue projections were based on the show at peak popularity. The reality was machines performing 40 to 50% below forecast, according to internal performance reports. Casinos had already committed to expensive marketing campaigns. Former marketing directors reveal they had multi-million-dollar promotional plans ready to launch and had to scrap everything because players were literally telling floor staff they hated the show and wouldn't play machines associated with it. The sunk costs extended beyond just the machines themselves. Themed promotional materials were already produced. Floor space had been allocated and reconfigured. Staff had been trained on the game features. One former casino executive stated they watched the fastest brand collapse in licensing history unfold, while their property was contractually committed to keeping these machines active. Early removal became the only option at some properties, but that meant eating the costs of units that were supposed to generate revenue for years. Former finance officers confirmed these machines represented millions in lost projected revenue across the industry. The lesson was painful and expensive. Cultural licensing carries timing risks that can turn a sure bet into a disaster in a matter of weeks. And now for the final machine on this list, the one that caused the biggest industry controversy and continues to generate legal battles and regulatory nightmares to this day. Machine number 9, virtual sports betting terminals. This category of machines nearly shut down casinos in multiple states, and what former casino executives reveal about this controversy shows why it tops the list as the most regretted decision in modern gaming history. This one is so controversial that it's currently banned or restricted in over a dozen jurisdictions, and the regulatory apocalypse it triggered continues to reshape the entire industry. Here's what these machines actually were: electronic gambling terminals disguised as sports betting, featuring animated or simulated sporting events with results generating every 2 to 3 minutes. They looked like skill-based sports betting, complete with racing graphics and sports themes, but former gaming regulators confirmed these were pure random number generators with no actual skill component whatsoever. The initial appeal to casinos was undeniable. According to former casino operations directors, some locations were seeing $50,000 or more per unit monthly. The genius, if you can call it that, was exploiting a loophole between sports betting regulations and slot machine classifications. Former legal counsel reveals these machines qualified for lower tax rates in certain jurisdictions and could be placed in non-traditional venues like bars, truck stops, and gas stations where traditional slot machines were prohibited. The money was staggering, and casinos expanded these installations aggressively. Then the catastrophic backlash began. Problem gambling advocates launched coordinated campaigns highlighting addiction rates associated with these rapid play terminals. Major media outlets ran exposés showing vulnerable populations losing thousands of dollars in single sessions at gas stations and convenience stores. Regulatory investigations were initiated simultaneously in multiple states. The Virginia controversy between 2019 and 2022 became the breaking point. Former gaming commissioners describe emergency legislative sessions where lawmakers crafted bills specifically to ban or severely restrict these machines. Illinois faced similar scandals with what they called video gaming terminals. State after state began implementing emergency bans, and the industry-wide regulatory scrutiny intensified to levels former executives say they'd never experienced. The casino regrets were immediate and devastating. Properties faced sudden removal requirements, forcing them to pull thousands of units, generating millions in monthly revenue. Legal costs exploded as operators fought bans in multiple jurisdictions simultaneously. One former casino executive stated they knew it was a gray area legally, but the revenue was too good to ignore. When regulatory hammers came down across the country, it cost them everything they'd made and significantly more in legal fees and reputation damage. Financial impact estimates suggest billions in lost revenue across the industry, but the real cost was the regulatory scrutiny increase that affected every aspect of casino operations. Former industry analysts confirmed these machines didn't just cost individual properties money. They triggered an industry-wide crisis that fundamentally changed how gaming regulators viewed casino innovation and exploitation of legal gray areas. Current status reports indicate ongoing legal battles in several states, with regulatory uncertainty preventing any resolution. This represents the evolution from isolated casino regrets to systemic industry catastrophe, which is precisely why it claims the top position on this list. So there you have it. 9 machines that casinos desperately wish they'd never installed, and the insider information that explains exactly why these units became legendary regrets throughout the industry. Let's recap what former casino executives revealed. Megabucks, the $39 million payout that created contractual nightmares across Nevada. Wheel of Fortune Triple Extreme Spin, the malfunction generator that cost properties between $2 and $3 million each in legal fees and settlements. Blazing Sevens, the Advantage player's gold mine that hemorrhaged $40,000 to $60,000 weekly to professional teams who understood the technical vulnerabilities better than surveillance directors. Hot roll dice, the maintenance catastrophe that consumed more money in technician overtime and parts replacement than it ever generated in revenue. Lion's Share, the 20-year embarrassment that occupied Premium M, GM Grand Floor Space while becoming a social media phenomenon, highlighting exactly how rare progressive jackpots actually hit. Pinball, the skill-based disaster that cost the industry an estimated $3 to $4 million in failed pilot programs. Elvis Lives, the licensing nightmare where casinos paid the Presley estate more money than the machines generated, locked into contracts they couldn't escape. Game of Thrones, the timing catastrophe that arrived on casino floors exactly when the brand became toxic, performing 40 to 50% below projections. And virtual sports betting terminals, the regulatory apocalypse that triggered emergency legislation across multiple states and cost the industry billions, while fundamentally changing how gaming commissions viewed casino innovation. Collectively, according to estimates from former industry analysts, these 9 machines and categories cost casinos between $500 million and over $1 billion in direct losses, legal fees, regulatory penalties, and opportunity costs. Notice the pattern that emerges when you examine these cases together. Whether the disaster stemmed from technical problems, licensing miscalculations, manufacturing defects, or regulatory exploitation, each machine proves that casinos make catastrophically expensive mistakes despite all their data analysis and financial projections. Understanding what casinos regret tells you something crucial about how this industry really operates. Casinos aren't infallible institutions with perfect information. They make billion-dollar errors, get systematically exploited by players who identify technical vulnerabilities, and face devastating consequences when they prioritize short-term revenue over long-term sustainability. The machines you see on casino floors today survived a brutal selection process. They're occupying that space because they consistently generate profit without triggering the legal nightmares, maintenance disasters, or regulatory catastrophes that destroyed their predecessors. New machines aren't always innovation or improvement. Sometimes they're experiments that casinos are testing on you, and history shows those experiments frequently fail spectacularly. Now you know what red flags look like: overly complex bonus features that malfunction, licensed content with questionable timing, skill-based gimmicks that sound revolutionary, and regulatory gray areas that seem too profitable to be sustainable. This insider information from former casino CEOs, operations directors, and industry executives puts you on more equal footing than players who walk onto casino floors blind. This kind of insider information, straight from former casino executives and gaming regulators who finally agreed to go on record, is exactly what casinos don't want circulating publicly. If you want more exposés revealing what really happens behind casino doors, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Here's my question for you. Have you ever played any of these 9 machines? Did you witness casinos suddenly removing popular units without explanation? Let me know in the comments because I read every single one, and your experiences might reveal patterns that even former executives didn't discuss. I'll keep bringing you the truth about what really happens in this industry, and in my next video, I'm revealing the machines casinos love installing and why that should terrify you. Until then, gamble smart, and remember, now you know what even the casinos wish they didn't.